So good morning. Thanks everybody for joining us. Welcome to understanding the NAR settlement. This is going to actually end up being a part one. Part two will come, and we'll talk about that after the forms are out. Right. So we are doing this on Zoom. We're also doing this in person. So welcome to everybody on Zoom, and of course, thank you everybody who's here in our office. We're glad to have you. Before we get started, I have to do this. My malpractice carrier makes me. But this is not legal advice. It's just general legal information. It is the same disclaimer I use for everything. Please don't sue. That's it. There we go. A little bit about our firm. We are licensed. I'm licensed both New York, New Jersey, and Florida. My partner, Matt Rosenthal, is licensed in New York and Florida. We handle real estate law as well as title. So we work with individuals who have real estate questions. We handle business law, estate planning, business law, estate planning, probate, and business and Medicaid planning, as well as the title insurance. We can answer questions for realtors, and that's one of the things that we do. We provide education like you're getting today. We can also do private classes for if a mortgage company has questions or if somebody has needs. We can do private classes. We can also, for realtors or for clients, we can assist with legal questions about contracts. I answer about 10 of those a day sometimes. And we also have this meeting space available for realtor team meetings if you want to do an offsite or if you have a virtual team. We do have a net sheet calculator if you want to download it. There's a handy QR code. And I can send a link to the presentation and also the net sheet calculator after we're done as well. All right, so a little bit about me. As I said, I'm licensed in Florida, New York, and New Jersey. I'm licensed also in 3 federal courts up in the Northeast. So I do not practice litigation at this time. My only court involvement is really probate. But I do handle primarily real estate business law, handling transactions from Florida, New York, multi-state transactions. So let's talk about why we're here. How did we get here? Some of you took Alafaya Trail. Some of you took 408, 417. Some of you never left your houses. Those were the smart ones. But let's talk about really how we got here. Sometimes I wish I don't leave my house, as people will tell you. Let's talk about how we got here. In March 2019, 2 lawsuits were. A lawsuit was filed. Another one came in April 2019. Moehrl was in March. Burnett was in April. Everybody's talking about Burnett. They're roughly the same lawsuit with different attorneys. The Burnett attorneys are taking the lead on this, which is why a lot of people are talking about the Burnett case. The Moehrl case is being settled in this as well. All right. After these 2 cases were filed, copycat lawsuits started coming about. A lot of them in the same federal district as the Burnett case, not a lot as in the Moehrl case. All right. In October 2023, there was a settlement. The lawsuit went to a jury. Hello, welcome. The lawsuit went to a jury. Oh, you're fine. The lawsuit went to a jury. The jury found for the plaintiffs. We'll talk who the plaintiffs were in a second. With a judgment of over $1 billion. More lawsuits were filed after that. Right? Hey, they won. Let's do it again. Including, by the way, some in Florida. And now we have the settlement from March of 2024. What are the suits alleged? All the plaintiffs are home sellers. There are separate cases with buyers, but all the plaintiffs in these cases are home sellers. They all paid, obviously, a commission to a buyer's agent. And they're all saying that because they had to pay a commission to the buyer's agent. One, this was anti-competitive. That buyer's agents didn't try as hard to get business. That seller's agents didn't work as hard to get business because they knew they were getting 6% or 1/2 of 6%. I have thoughts of their actions. They claimed an anti-competitive conspiracy that that nobody was really working in competition. And that if you didn't have to pay the buyer's agent, commission rates would be lower because they'd then be half of it, I guess. And there would be more competition because people would then negotiate based on lower commission rates.
Good question. I mean, is it because of like the listing agreement in those states is just very unclear?
I don't know what the listing agreement in Missouri looks like, so I can't answer that. I think it's in part because people don't understand how real estate works. I think it's in part possibly because those listing agreements were unclear. I have not looked at the findings of that. This went to a jury. The jury found, but listing agreements vary from place to place, and I have a feeling that's a big part of it. Okay. But they're alleging that buyer's agents have to compete with each other because they're all going to get the same amount of commission anyway. It's paid for by the seller. Seller's agents aren't providing services. I think part of this is the main plaintiffs had bad agents, because I know what services seller's agents provide. And they're saying that home prices are artificially inflated. I don't know.
That's nothing.
But they're saying, and I know how we all in this room are going to feel about it, that if you lower the commission, say to 3%, then home prices will drop 3%. What's happening is sellers are going to pocket 3%. We all.
Just like Bill.
So in March of 2024, there was a settlement. Who's covered under the settlement? NAR, obviously, NAR. NAR members who are not suing who aren't suing NAR. If you are going to sue them, you can't be covered under the settlement for them. Okay. And NAR member brokerage with $2 billion or less in total volume for the year 2022. $2 billion or less. Covered with an opt-in. Most MLS services have to opt in to the settlement by agreeing to certain things. By the way, any agent who wants to be covered will have to choose to comply with the settlement term. And brokers with over $2 billion in total volume for 2022. Think Keller Williams. Think EXP. Century 21. So we're going to get to it in a second. Long and Foster, Berkshire Hathaway. So we're going to get to them in a second. But EXP, somebody said Compass is probably covered under that. Some of the really big national brokerages. Douglas Elliman might be. But who's not covered? Berkshire Hathaway and their companies. Long and Foster, Home Services America, which is all basically under the umbrella of, which is all kind of versions, all under the same umbrella. They are choosing not to settle. How this affects their agents is an open question, because the opt-in brokerages have to tell their agents, you're going to follow the settlement. You're going to follow the new settlement procedures. It's going to be an open question what that's going to mean for their agents, because if they're not following the settlement procedures, are they then covered even if they are NAR members? NAR is saying they're covered, that agents are covered, employees are not. But that's going to depend in part on, are the agents following with the procedures? You had a question?
Question about, like, if the MLS is in the seller or whatever, so how would that work for them? Like, if they're opting out, you know, it's covered, but then they would be out of the MLS.
Nope.
No?
So MLS, we'll get to that.
Okay.
All right. In fact, we're gonna get to that right now. Look at that.
A mind reader.
We planned it. The MLS, the big change for the MLS, no more listing buyer's compensation. Nowhere. Nowhere in the MLS listing can you put buyer's compensation. The buyer's compensation field is gonna go away. Buyer's agent compensation. That's going away. You're not gonna be able to put it in realtor remarks. You're not gonna be able to put it in other remarks. You're not gonna be able to put it in, you know, a super secret field that only real estate agents can see. The MLS cannot allow any broker compensation to appear on the MLS. How will they enforce it? It would not surprise me if they have a spot check system by people. It would not surprise me if they have a bot of some kind that scans everything and looks for keywords like 3%.
Or like, kind of like what they do with fair housing.
Yeah.
On the description, you see something that.
Yep.
I get an email.
It wouldn't surprise me if that's in place.
Can you have it on your website?
I'm gonna get to that. Okay. You are also not going to be allowed to require buyer's agent compensation to list a listing on the MLS. It is no longer going to be required if you want to put a property onto the MLS that you have to offer buyer's agent compensation. You will not have to. You won't have to disclose in there that you aren't offering it. You won't be able to disclose that you're not offering it, but you don't have to put it in. Buyer's agents. We're going to talk more about this in a bit, but you're going to have to get buyer brokerage agreements before showing a home. Showing or touring, by the way. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. And you need to disclose the amount of commission in a way that's discernible. This is going to get tricky. Because if you put that you're going to get a 2.5% commission and the buyer and the seller's agent's offering 3%, you can't get that extra 0.5%. If you put that you are going to take a 2.5% commission and the seller's agent is offering 3%, you can't get that extra 0.5%. What I have heard some agents say they plan to do is they plan to put 5 or 6% in the buyer brokerage agreement, and then they'll waive whatever the seller is.
But then the buyer.
I don't know, but the buyer could be on the hook for that other 3%. So there's caution there. I don't want to say do that yet. Let's see what some of these forms look like and see how some of this plays out. All right. You're going to need a buyer brokerage agreement for open houses because it says touring. Now, not every selling agent does their own open houses. They have buyer's agents who cover open houses for them. But buying and selling agents who are doing open houses are going to need to get some kind of buyer brokerage agreement, or the person's going to have to opt out somehow.
Unless they already have a buyer's agreement signed.
Then they're going to have to opt out and say, I have a buyer's agreement already.
So there's.
You're going to want to you have to document it somehow.
So if someone shows up to an open house unrepresented, it's like you can't come in until you scan this and you opt out or sign this.
Right, even if it's represented.
Even if they're represented, you want them checking a box that says they're
Everybody has
represented. So here's what agents can start doing now on this. Yeah, open houses are going to have a line to get in. You're going to need to start looking for what technology is going to make this easier. Okay, look at what works for you with Form Simplicity. iPads, but can a cheap Kindle tablet work? Right, an iPad is, you know, however much money. But can you get a cheap tablet off Amazon? You can get a cheap tablet off Amazon. Use that. Well, you know, have them type in their name and it assembles on Form Simplicity. Look at pre-printed agreements. Right now, it doesn't require that the agreement be for anything more than the one property. So I don't need a full agreement to make you my agent for life to tour this open house. I'm unrepresented. I'm touring this open house. I have a buyer's brokerage agreement for you for this house. And that's what I'm going to see. I go to the next house, I have a buyer brokerage agreement for that house. Be wary though,
For each house.
for each house.
So how many agreements is gonna have one person?
So how many houses they
You wanna
do
say
this
the
in a
house?
weekend? Yeah, now, but be wary because other agents may say, you want to see this house, I have to be your agent for life. So make sure they know what they're signing. Because if I'm going to 4 open houses and one of the agents says you have to sign this buyer brokerage agreement for the house, and by the way, it makes me your agent. I have an agent now. So this is gonna get complicated, it's gonna get dicey. Make sure you know what your clients are signing when they go to open houses. What may end up being better, and having an opt-out. By the way, if they have an opt-out, you can't help them. I'm not your agent. You've opted out.
It's a good thing in a way, but.
Yeah.
Well, in commercial, we sign one for every single client.
It's-
But we sign it for a time frame. Like if we think it's gonna be a SBA loan, it's gonna be 9 months, we sign it for that.
It's best practices to be doing it. Not all buyers agents are.
They don't, but
So-
do we sign it for a day then? Just one day
It's,
for a
I mean, that's gonna be the question.
oh,
So, I mean, and the reality is that's the question. This was done with not, having read the settlement several times, I can tell you, looking at it, I'm willing to bet there were exactly 0 people who know real estate in the room. There were litigators.
Yeah.
Because from a litigation standpoint, it's beautifully crafted, except for one typo.
In the practice.
Except for one set of typos where they forgot to update a couple of paragraphs. It is beautifully crafted. From a settlement standpoint, from a legal standpoint, it is really well done. From a real estate standpoint, it shows a fundamental misunderstanding of the practice.
So they had absolutely no expert witness.
In the trial,
Yeah,
probably, and nobody bought, and the expert witnesses were not believed. The settlement is post-trial. NAR lost. So this is the settlement that they came to because otherwise the settlement could have been financially crippled. For sellers agents, what does the settlement mean? You're not required to offer compensation to buyers agents. Plan on that being a talking point. You may offer compensation though, and you may list it anywhere but the MLS. On your website, you can say, we offer a flat 3% to buyers agents or a flat 2.5% to buyers agents. In showing time, as long as that's not run by the MLS, you can say, we offer 2.5%.
it's linked.
It's
with
linked
MLS.
to the MLS, but it's not run by the MLS. It's a private company. So the MLS cannot facilitate offers of compensation,
Right.
which means the MLS can't say, well, we don't have offers of compensation on the MLS, but check out this neat side website that we have that coincidentally also has all the offers of compensation. MLS can't facilitate it. Showing Time being a separate company that not everybody uses, not everybody has to use. You can put in the Showing Time notes, here are the offers of compensation.
What about realtor.com?
Probably
Wow.
you can, but
They syndicate those.
they syndicate from the MLS. Zillow syndicates from the MLS. So anything that's syndicating from the MLS isn't going to get compensation. You can go in and add it to all these places. You can also do it the old school way. When somebody says, hey, is this property still available? Yeah, you can text them or call them back and be like, yes, it's still available and I'm offering this commission. Any way other than the MLS is okay. Here's where it gets tricky though about putting it on the website. An offer can be a compensation offer can be contingent. You come at this amount, we'll give you and we're giving you a commission. You come at this amount and we're not. You can make different offers of compensation to different agents. So let's say I have a Keller Williams, I'm a Keller Williams agent. Another Keller Williams agent comes, I'm going to offer them 3%. If a non-Keller Williams agent comes, I'm only offering them 2%. Is that allowed? 100%.
Yeah.
There's gonna be so,
That is 100% allowed now.
I wonder now, as you're a title company, right?
Mhm.
So in the settlement statement, usually the title company takes it from the seller's proceeds
Mhm.
to pay the buyer's agent. I wonder if that's gonna be taken from the brokerage now, since,
That's going to
I
be,
think that's-
I don't know the
Okay.
answer to that because I haven't started seeing how these are gonna be set up.
okay,
I will have to see so there are going to be some new commission structures coming out of this. That we'll talk about.
say,
One of the Florida Realtors forms that's gonna be coming out is a co-brokerage agreement. So essentially, the buyer's agent will be working as a co-broker with the seller's agent. We'll talk about this more at the end, but we'll be doing another presentation in June, once those forms have all been released, to go over what the forms mean, how to use them, what you need to add to.
is that on May 30th, Florida Realtor Center?
That's when they said they're gonna have it out. I've stopped holding my breath for anybody to do anything on the date they say. I assume it'll either be before or after that, but I don't expect it to actually be on the 30th. I mean, I'm hoping it is on the 30th, and then we will do ours probably the first week of June. Second week of June, but we'll set it after we've had a chance to see their documents.
So can I ask a question then?
Okay,
Now it looks like MLS is the bad one. I'm just saying. So if you weren't on the MLS and you're a realtor, you could list on Realtor and Homes and everywhere, right? Because it's not affiliated and you're not a NAR or you're not.
yes, but most people aren't, as far as I know, you can't list on Realtor on its own.
the realtor is part of the.
It's-
It is?
It buys the data from the MLS.
The consumer, Realtor.com is a consumer site for the MLS.
Oh, you
Yeah.
can't go.
You can't just go to those. No, it doesn't work like a commercial site. So,
Oh,
but part of the key thing to take away from here, buyer's agents commissions are now part of the negotiation.
Just like commercial.
Buyer's agents commissions are now part of the negotiation.
it's easy, easy.
So
Easy.
let's look at some of the changes that buyer's agents are gonna need to make. You can't filter out listings anymore. The commission is lower than you want, or there's no commission being offered, you can no longer filter it out. You have to show the property to the buyer. But wait, I'm gonna talk about that in a minute. I see your face. Give me a minute. Give me a minute. We're gonna get there. Okay? You're gonna need to state what the commission is going to be. It can be a flat fee, it can be a percentage, it can be donuts or, live chickens. But you have to state what it's going to be. It has to be determinable. Okay? So it can't be whatever the seller's agent is offering. It has to be 3%, 2%, 2.5%, plus 35,000, plus 350, 500, 750, whatever your transaction.
Does it have to reflect the contractual agreement between the listing agent and the seller? I mean, the listing agent just can't come up with. Or
This is for the buyer's agents.
for the listing agent,
No, so this is buyer's agent.
right,
They don't know what the listing agent has done yet.
right, but what I'm saying is that it's not like, it's up to the listing agent to determine, oh. This
So-
particular agent,
So that's where it gets tricky, right? So the question is, doesn't depend on what the listing agent offers. That's where this is gonna get a little tricky. If this is going to be my commission is 3%. Seller's agent only offers 2% or a flat fee of 6,000 or whatever. Then where's the rest of it come from? Okay, you do need to state where the commission comes from. But there's gonna be some flexibility there. You can say from the seller's agent and balance to be paid by the buyer or what have you, right? There's gonna be it doesn't have to say one source, but it does have to say where it's coming from.
that
Let me-
would be listed on the broker agreement.
Co-broker agreement doesn't exist yet, so I don't know yet.
I know, but
No, this is the
Purpose, yeah.
buyer's agent agreement. This is
So
the buyer's
basically
agent
what
agreement.
you're saying that Now, you're gonna, regardless of the listing and
Yeah.
offering, we have to negotiate with our buyer where we disclose in advance.
Yep.
We show us
This
the
is our
max
commission.
where we're
This is
getting
where
it.
the money's coming from.
So it's gonna get tricky because if we put in here, like you were saying, 2.5, but they're offering 2, then we cannot collect the extra half point
Right,
unless
unless it's collected from the buyer.
Unless, but you
No,
can only
even
collect it from
not.
the buyer if you
you
say in the
said
agreement
before
that the
sign.
buyer will pay the commission if the seller doesn't pay.
So you may wanna go higher, but that may scare the buyer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you
right.
have to, if it's lower in the listing side, we have to say, okay, we'll waive it. But that's a conversation you wanna have verbally, but they'll be like, no, I wanna see it in writing. It's
Right.
gonna
You,
get tricky.
you wanna be careful having that conversation verbally too, because
Correct.
what happens when you have a real paying client?
Mhm,
You've earned that 4%.
mhm.
The seller's agent's only offering 2. You want that other 2%. There's issues there that we're gonna talk about where that money comes from, but that is also a concern. So you are gonna need to start saying where the money is coming from. You should, if you are not using a buyer's agent agreement, just get into the habit now. Don't wait until mid-July to get into that habit. Get into the habit now. Because
It's just the conversations are different.
it's, well,
That's the biggest challenge. We
The
can
convers-
have them assign, from left to right. It's having those conversations.
oh, the
that,
conversations,
in case the summer.
the conversations are already happening.
Yeah.
Okay? I read an article in the New York Times the other day that said, I signed an agreement to sell my house with an agent up in New York. I'm paying 6% commission, 3%. I agreed to give the buyer's agent 3%. Now that the NAR settlement happened, can I walk that back?
If they're being empowered.
Okay, that conversation is already happening. People already know about this. So what is the next step? What is the conversation? The conversation is going to be what happens next. All right, people already know about this. The news has been all over the place with the death of the 6% commission. The death of the 6% commission, and housing prices are going to drop. This is not going to cause housing prices to drop. I don't believe that. Nobody believes that except the news. Okay? But if it bleeds, it leads. And the death of the 6% commission bleeds for a lot of people. Is this the death of the 6% commission? Honestly, I don't think it is. Is it going to make it more complicated? Yeah. Are you going to see some sellers starting to push back? I don't want to pay a buyer's agent. Yeah. And that's where good listing agents are going to have the conversation of, you need to compensate, because here's what the buyer's agent's going to do. The buyer's agent is going to be doing a lot of work. And let me stress this point, you don't need to work for free. Okay? Here's what it means. When I said you have to show a listing if they're not offering compensation. You absolutely do. Print it out off the MLS. Here you go, Mr. Buyer. Here's a listing. They are not offering compensation. I'm not going to be able to take you to see it. But I'll put you in touch with the listing agent. There's no compensation for me. I'm not, unless you want to pay me 3%, I can't show you that listing. Where they're offering 500, I can't do that. That's not going to work. Okay. If they're not offering compensation, showing them the listing means saying, here's a house I think you'd really like. It's 5 bedrooms on 3 acres. It's got a pool, a hot tub, a mini golf course, and 2 horses in the back that also speak to you. Here you go. You're going to love it. It's $180,000. You should take it. Great. When are we going to see it? Whenever you want to. I won't be there. Who's doing the inspection? Whoever you hire, I won't be there. That is the seller's agent's answer too, right? Why? Who's opening the door for the inspector? Who's opening the door for the appraiser? Who's opening the door for this, for this, for this? Buyers and sellers agents work well together. Buyers who don't have agents do not. We get calls sometimes as attorneys, and primarily from people in New York, New Jersey, who want to hire us to represent them in purchases or in sales. And I'm happy to do it. First question I ask, who's your agent? Oh, we're not using an agent, we're hiring you. No, 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 no. I do the legal side, but I am not a real estate agent. I don't open doors. I don't go to inspections. I read them and look to see, is this house about to fall down? Don't buy it if it is. But I can't tell you what the new plumbing is worth in a repair addendum. I can't tell you what, the AC being 15 years old is worth as a credit. I don't know the difference between different kinds of piping. I don't have to, it's not my job.
Yeah.
You know who does? Your realtor. But we thought, no, no, no. You're a realtor. I'm not opening a door. Don't call me and ask and say you're the attorney. No, I'm going to read the closing documents for you in a different way than the realtor would. And that's my job. I'm going to read the title, go over it with you. I'm going to read the municipal lien report, go over it with you. That's my job. I don't do what a realtor does. I have people coming to me asking. So it's going to be for both buyers and sellers talking about that value. What do? I'm the one who makes the deal go.
It's that listing agent having that conversation at a listing appointment.
Yep.
To add the value of a buyer's agent. We need to compensate them because I'm not gonna, attend inspections and.
Listing agents show up for 20 minutes. Look at this nice house, inspector. Isn't it great? Nothing wrong with it. All right, well, it's been fun. I'm going to go on to my next appointment now. And then 4 hours later, the inspector has a list, 28 pages long of things that are wrong with the house.
Yeah.
I mean, the listing agent's never seen it before.
Nobody's gonna negotiate.
Right. That's the question. Who's going to represent the buyer? Who's going to negotiate for the buyer?
Only suggestion I've heard on that is. I'll list it on 50%.
That's going to get that's going to get tricky. I'd be careful with that because we'll come back to that. I'd be nervous about putting it that way.
It's gonna whenever, I take a listing under additional terms, I'll indicate if I provide the buyer,
Mhm.
the co-op commission is this.
Yeah.
And it's different than what the other co-op commission is. So it's just having that conversation, like, we have to compensate a buyer's agent.
It's having
Yeah.
conversations. I'd be careful with what you suggested because again, you still need the buyer's brokerage, you still need the buyer's agent listing agreement or buyer's agent agreement in place there too. And that's gonna it all gets a little fudgier than I would like. So, all right, so what hasn't changed? Talked a lot about what has changed. Talk about what hasn't for a minute. Sellers can still pay a buyer's agent commission. They don't think they can, but they can. The law hasn't changed requiring that buyers pay their own commission. Commercial real estate transactions, as far as I can tell, it's not covered under the settlement. Okay, commercial real estate transactions are not affected. They're all reading the same news. They think they're affected, but they're not. Rental listings are not affected for the most part, except for where they are. And where they are is when you list them on the MLS, there goes the compensation. So the compensation can still be offered, but you have to do the same thing that you're gonna do for listings, which is put it somewhere else. Why? Because the MLS has to eliminate the compensation field. If for some reason you put a commercial property on the MLS, you can't offer compensation through the MLS because the MLS there won't be a space for it. Okay. Come mid-July, whenever this goes into effect, and I'm guessing it'll be probably on the 15th, which is a Monday. Everybody's saying mid-July. That's about as mid as you can get. It's on a Monday, and it's the 15th of the month. I'll be in New York, so already got a vacation planned for that day, actually, which is coincidental, I promise, but be nice. I mean, they do anyway. But Once this goes into effect, the MLS will delete that field. It will no longer be an option for you to type it in.
July.
Mid-July, I'm guessing the 15th, but it just says mid-July right now. Okay? Keep in mind, this settlement hasn't actually been approved by a judge yet. So it is still, there are a couple ways that it is subject to change. One is that a judge still has to give a preliminary approval and then final approval after the class notices have all gone. They've all already started.
Is there a chance that the judge will say, this is bogus, ridiculous, throw it out the window?
Yes.
Really?
I mean, there's a chance that the judge will collapse on the bench tomorrow and we start from scratch. Do I think there's a high chance of that? No. Do I think there's a chance? Yes. Because 2% is still a chance. Do I think there's a realistic chance? No, this is a pretty comprehensive settlement that the parties spent a lot of time on. Now, here's where the real option for this to cancel comes. In addition to the settlement we have all seen, there is, I may be getting ahead of myself, there is a secret side agreement that the parties have, that nobody has seen. This confidential supplemental agreement says that if enough home sellers opt out of the class, this settlement is worth. It's confidential. Nobody knows what that number is. Okay.
From the ones that fought.
So no. So here's how class actions work, and you're starting to see this happen already. If there's a class action, I sue on behalf of, I don't know, all car owners. Cars are bad because 4 wheels are inherently evil. 4 is the number of, pick your demon of choice, right? I win. We get a settlement. A notice then has to go to any potential member of the class. You get 20 of these a year. Okay. Zoom sent you 30. Zoom, you had Zoom from this date to this date. Therefore, you may be entitled to be a member of the class. I got one for a car I owned 5 years ago that, if it was stolen, I was entitled to money. Wasn't, so I'm not entitled to anything. I had to still own it. But, members of a class, any potential member of a class gets a notice. If you are opting into the class, you have to fill out some paperwork. If you are opting out of the class, you have to fill in some different paperwork. If you opt into the class or do nothing, you waive your right to sue. This settlement, this class action settlement that I got with my car, that I no longer own and have it for 5 years, by not doing anything, I can't sue the manufacturer of the car saying my car got stolen because you didn't have an adequate steering wheel lock or something, whatever it was. So if I get the settlement, I throw it away, I can't sue. If I get the settlement, I opt in, I'll get whatever my percentage of the class settlement is, but I can't sue. If I opt out, I can then file my own lawsuit. Opting out of the class is what is required to file my own lawsuit. So until we know how many people have opted out, we won't know how many people are in the class. Do I think you'll see a large number of opt-outs? You never did. Is it possible? Sure. Okay. What else hasn't changed? In Florida, you're still prohibited from dual agency. Okay. Transaction brokerage is still going to be the default. Settlement doesn't change any of that. So make sure your agreement, if you don't want to change it, your agreement isn't changing it. Okay. This is where, again, though, if you're going to start using a buyer's brokerage agreement, you need to make sure you're reading it. It needs to specify your role as either a transaction broker or a single agent. And if you're representing both the buyer and the seller, where if your thing, where if it says if I represent the seller, it's an extra 1%, 2%, then you have to be a transaction broker. You cannot have dual agency. You cannot have a fiduciary duty to both parties. It will not work. one of the biggest issues that we're seeing with the settlement though is gonna be lending on the lending side. So if anybody knows a mortgage guy who's sitting here who has thoughts on it. Okay, one of the big ones is VA loans. Don't allow any compensation for the buyer's agent from the buyer. We haven't heard any updates from the VA on what they're doing with this, except that they're looking at it.
Right now, buyer's agent under compensation.
Would have to put 3%, 4%, 2%, whatever. And it would have to state that it is coming from the seller. But here's the thing. FHA, Fannie and Freddie are gonna have to say the same thing unless your buyer can come up with that money because you can't borrow against it. Okay? FHA, Fannie and Freddie have said that they cannot allow buyer's agent commission to be a part of the loan. Some of the non-QM, non-Fannie Freddie FHA loans are going to start offering that. I'm telling you now. They're going to pay a higher interest rate, but they're going to be you'll see it in some of the non-QM private money type stuff. You'll see it. It'll be there. But the FHA, Fannie Freddie loans cannot include it.
What about seller concessions? Can the buyer say, yeah, this goes to closing costs, interest guidance, buyer's agent?
A seller's concession may be used to cover this. Because we haven't gotten a lot yet from Fannie, Freddie, and FHA. But you cannot say from a seller's concession that it can only be used for this. So if a seller offers a $10,000 concession, it can be used for any quote. It can't be limited to be used for a buyer's agent commission. Some sellers' concessions are up to X. Some are, I'm giving a $10,000 seller's concession. Some are, I'm giving up to $10,000 for purposes to cover an interest rate buyback. You can't do that. And you can't limit it here to a seller's concession of X to cover the buyer's agent commission. It has to be a general seller's concession. Will that work to cover a loan to meet the loan requirements? I'll be honest, possibly, but nobody's 100% sure yet because it's going to take one or two of these going through Fannie, Freddie, FHA before we get real clear guidance. Also keep in mind, different loan programs cap the amount of seller's concessions at different amounts.
So, okay, so let's say, selling of 13,000
Hmm.
and normally it shows, what's this? Yes, so it doesn't say that it's for my commission, so the broker is gonna have to negotiate with the buyer out of the transaction.
It's gonna be really messy.
How does that work?
Oh no, it's gonna be messy, but don't worry, it's gonna be messy for me.
I'm sure it's gonna be an addendum.
Yeah.
Amount that you have to there's
It'll-
a writer, another writer.
It'll get messy.
Yeah.
Look,
It's gonna be an addendum.
the second half of 2024 is gonna be real interesting for some of these contracts and loans. The second half of 2024 is gonna be real interesting for contracts and loans, which is why it's always good to have an attorney title company. But I'm not biased in any way. Over there is where you'd see my law license if I had framed them.
There's gonna be like so many like correct.
Yeah.
People in front of
Yeah.
us.
It's gonna be,
Collusion lawsuits come out of the.
that's what this
You were
is.
saying
That's what
about-
this is. This is an anti-competition conspiracy lawsuit.
Well, what you mentioned earlier of, I may give a higher commission to someone from brokerage. Would that come up with a lawsuit?
Probably.
That's
Will
what
it?
is.
What I worry about is like, and say, okay, they negotiate with the seller at 5% to sub house. And comes somebody say again and say, okay, well, because you're in this broker, I'm gonna offer you 2%. You're from this brokerage, I'm gonna offer you 1%. And then you're gonna have like kind of
And you-
play with those percents like that.
You're gonna, not only are you gonna get that, but you're also going to get, competing buyers, agents offering to take different commissions.
Right.
Okay, it can be because one of the places it can be as an additional term in the contract. I would not expect it to be in the printed terms. The buyer's agent, I would not expect that change to be made. There are reasons not to put it there. For one, the buyer's agent, the seller's agent are not actually parties to the contract. But it could very well be an additional term that the seller will pay the buyer's agent, because right now, the buyer may end up being responsible for the buyer's agent commission.
That's what I was asking about, who pays at closing.
And the answer to that is it's not 100% clear yet, and I will have a better answer for that when these deals start coming in. It will in part depend, there's not gonna be a clear answer there. It will depend in part on what the different agreements say. Now, when I get a deal, about half the time I get the listing agreement. And I like to have it for my file, but if I don't get it, I don't stress. Going forward, starting July 1st, I'm going to require, in addition to the signed contract, I need the signed listing agreement, I need the signed buyer's brokerage agreement. I will need all of these. They will need to be in my file. And I will have to read through all of it, because I will need to know who's paying what commissions. By the way, my software right now does not offer me the ability to put the commission on the buyer side. My software, when I generate this, it just puts it on the seller side. If I want it as a buyer expense, I have to physically move it. I use what's now called closing. But all the software, sellers pay the commission. They're gonna have to redo all their software too. So it's gonna get tricky. All right, so here's the timeline. Right now, settlement's being reviewed. Okay, it's being discussed. We're here. Class notices have already started going out. More will be coming out as the judge gets, as things get in front of the judge. End of May, you've heard May 30th, I've heard just end of May is when, I feel like May 30th, maybe Memorial Day, but I could be wrong. I feel like it's late this year. That's when you're gonna see new commission agreements. There's already a new listing agreement out, but you'll see a new buyer brokerage agreement. You'll see a new co-broke agreement coming out. You'll see a couple of other addendums.
The 27th, it's Memorial Day.
All right, mid-July is when this goes into effect. I'm saying probably July 15th, but I'll note there is no actual set date. It's just mid-July. That's one of the mistakes in this. But I think they're waiting for the judge to give preliminary approval, and then they'll have a date with the judge. In the fall, you'll get final, possibly winter, spring, but expect that fall. Plan, the final approval matters less than the mid-July date. Mid-July is everything changes. Mid-July is this is when it starts. I would start making some of these practice changes July 1st. Why? Because you don't want to get caught. Right? What should you be doing now, though? Talking about July 1st, what should you be doing now? On the seller side, make sure you're communicating the value of the list of the buyer's agent. Okay? Of why you should be paying a buyer's agent commission. But also in the listing agreement where it says you're going to pay me a 6% commission, and I'm going to give 2.5%, 3% to the buyer's agent, make them initial that. Make them put their initials there. I know some agents do and some don't. I would make them put their initials there. I would make sure they've read it. I would say, here, you're going to initial this right here. Why? Because you don't want them coming back to you and saying, I didn't know I could negotiate this. I didn't know how much I was paying.
But the initials, does that confirm that they understood? It's kinda
No,
like-
but it helps. Does it confirm they understood? Nothing is perfect. It helps. I get people who ask me, who say to me, I say, what's your goal in this contract? And they say, I don't want to be sued. That's great. Anybody with a filing fee can sue anybody at any time. Doesn't mean they'll win. This helps you if people say, I don't want to be sued. You know, it doesn't keep you from being sued because nothing can, but it helps. This is going to be part of the conversation. Make sure they know the buyer's agent gets paid out of this. This is and the new listing agreement already says it in the new, and they'll have it, that it's not set by law. It is negotiable, and it is not, it's not required. But make sure they're initialing. Because that's how you're going to, that's confirmation that they read it. I didn't know I was paying. Yeah, you did. You signed it there.
Mm.
Now you might say, I didn't know I could have told you to pay them less, and we'll deal with that. But you knew you were paying 2.5% to the buyer's agent, because you initialed right there where it said, I'm paying 2.5% to the buyer's. On the buyer side, get in the habit of using buyer brokerage agreements and understanding how to talk about it. Okay. And let me stress this again. Know what tech you're gonna need. Get comfortable with it now. That first open house on, July 15th is a Monday. So July 20th is the next Saturday. That for those first open houses on July 20th. Oh, they're gonna be messy. Be the agent who's ready. Be the agent who knows how to use the 3 tablets that they've set up so that the commission fills in, so that everything is ready to go.
Have a lender in front door. Check people in.
I mean, yes, have a I'm talking about iPads, but I'm also talking about cheap tablets, because if you're gonna have 4 of them, you don't say want 4 iPads.
Sure.
But have somebody at the door, ready to check people in. Oh, it's so great, you want a tour of the house. Sign this. Be ready in the very beginning for those conversations. Why am I signing? Okay. Okay, check this box. I'm not signing anything. Okay, check this box saying you aren't signing anything. And when you have a question, I'm sorry, you didn't sign it, can't help you. I'm so sorry, I can't help you.
Can they go back and then sign, like, once they opt out, can they opt in?
Probably, it'll be messy, but yeah, I would have them, cross out their opt out. So what's next? There's forms, like I said, there's new forms coming out. I'm saying July 15th and the July 20th ones, but be ready to cover open houses. Be ready. I would say be ready for the 13th, 14th for those open houses. Why? Again, that's what sets you apart. I'm doing it now. 20th is maybe when you have to. So, but early June we'll be back here. I mean, I'm here every day, but early June we'll be, hopefully you'll all be back. Nah. Wednesdays I work from anywhere else I can find, but I'll probably be here Wednesday too though. Actually I won't, because I've got a repair person coming. That's more detailed than you needed about my life. Be ready for the open houses on the 13th and 14th, because if I'm wrong about the date, that's when it's going to happen. It's going to happen the 13th, 14th, or the 20th. Be ready on the 13th, 14th. Have everything in place by then. But they don't all have the tech now, but the listing, but the new buyer's agreements don't exist now. We'll be back here early June, where we'll be doing this presentation. We'll do a similar presentation where we're going over the forms, going over what you need to know. I have a feeling that one may end up being a little bit longer. But we'll go over all of them again. And we'll break down what you need to know about the new forms.
Off-market property.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Off-market properties.
I do a lot, I call on a lot, because there's not a lot of inventory for us right now.
Mhm.
So I call on a lot of off-market. I discuss it, and it's in our agreement, it's already in there, so it's gonna be easier than you think. It's built in there that if I find them an off-market property, they're going to pay me. It's all built in. It's gonna be easy. I think it's gonna be better.
What? Off-market is going to, some of these rules are going to apply and some aren't.
Oh.
Because if it's not on the MLS, none of the MLS rules apply.
So
You still will need a buyer's agent agreement.
Yeah, we still need a buy.
you still need
Okay.
an agreement.
That has nothing to do with the MLS.
But off market, you don't have a guarantee of compensation.
That's where
On
you
the
need,
MLS, would have it if they.
that's where you need a the buyer's agreement needs to say
Hire them.
how you're going to get paid. So it can say, I'm going to get paid by the seller, I'm gonna get 3% by you unless the seller chooses to pay me 3%.
Yeah, that's correct. We get this signed in the beginning.
Right.
So they know before you even ever go out and look for the property, that if I garner you an off-market property, you will pay this percentage.
And
It's all agreed ahead of time.
that's what some of the buyer's agents are gonna be doing.
Yeah, they're gonna be.
Some buyer's agents are going to be doing, you're gonna pay me 3%,
Yeah.
and that's gonna add 3% to your closing costs,
That's one.
unless the seller agrees to pay me 3%.
So in Europe, for example,
Mhm.
they don't have what is called a buyer. Most properties are being sold by the owner directly, and you have what it is, a personal shopper. So buyer agent there is considered a shopper, and then you collect a fee from the buyer. So
Yeah.
Europe does not have an MLS.
That
Puerto
was-
Rico has it, and it doesn't really work. So most listing agents get two sides, which is unfortunate because it doesn't promote the full market, and that was but yeah, we have to negotiate with the buyers.
That was part
Which
of
is what you're
part of the
saying.
suit was talking about the European example, the European model, and making a switch there, because home prices are lower in Europe.
It's, yeah. The,
That
yeah.
maybe,
Puerto
but
Rico
but
market is
also
a mess.
it's a different environment,
Like I compare to Puerto Rico because Puerto Rico has an MLS, they
Yeah.
choose not to use it. So unfortunately, buyer have had it really bad over there because you have to go straight to the listing agent. They don't do full brokering, so they don't understand. And what that does is like a mafia in
Yeah.
the market. They don't understand that the MLS is the best you can have for actually open market to expose a listing to get top dollar. But they don't, and so that's, I think.
So we're turning into that.
Yeah, well, pretty,
I don't.
we're gonna, there's a lot of people motivated, not motivated, like, there's a lot of skin in the game. Like, a lot of people live over one, like, attorney. I think people that do understand real estate are gonna step in, hopefully.
I don't think you're gonna be, I don't think we're gonna end up like Puerto Rico. I don't think we're gonna end up like that. What I think is going to happen is you're going to see two groups that are really, I'm saying this and I've heard other people say it. Two groups that are gonna suffer the most are gonna be veterans using VA loans.
First time.
Because I don't think the VA is gonna change their policy. They haven't when transaction fees became a thing. I don't think they're gonna change it now. And you're going to see first time home buyers who aren't savvy enough and just here, you're gonna, 3% commission and say, I can't afford that. And therefore,
They're almost barely coming on with the 3% down payments,
so
That is very.
that, now,
About program.
Exactly, for the down payment, for assistance.
Yeah.
How can you force that?
now, one thing that I'll say is if you really want to put pressure on sellers to offer broker compensation to the buyer's agent, why do you hate America? Why do you hate your veterans?
Exactly.
Okay.
And they're already being
That's
discriminated.
That's,
Already offers are being discriminated already, that's happening.
yeah, why do you hate America? That is the question I would ask, and I say that half jokingly, but I would put it to them. If you do this, veterans may not be able to buy your house. You're gonna have some who say, great, that sounds good. I don't want VA loans anyway, because VA loans come with that appraisal contingency that I don't want to deal with. But it's an interesting way to put pressure on sellers. And that may be a tactic I take. It may not be a tactic I take, but it's an interesting way to do it. It's not going to go smoothly in July and August. Hopefully September and October, we'll have a little bit more time to work the kinks out. And by the snowbird buying season in October, November, December, it'll get a little smoother. That's my hope in all of this. What do I think? I think this will be a rough second half of the year. I think there'll be a lot of conversations, in particular, a lot of conversations with sellers about, yes, you don't have to pay a 3% commission to the buyer, but you never had to pay a 3% commission to the buyer. And this is why we always did it. And this is why it works. And this is the advantage of doing it. Do you want your house to be seen? Because what's going to happen is you're going to have home buyers show up without an agent. Do you want them just wandering around your house? No, you want them with a trusted, licensed professional. When I've sold houses in both New York and Florida. I bought houses in both New York and Florida. In New York, because homeowners can come, sometimes the agent doesn't come with the homeowner. Always somebody in the house. Always somebody, either the listing agent or a homeowner. It's always in the house. Because in case they come without the agent, and the agent's supposed to hand you the card first, so you know that they're theoretically legit, but you can't just go to Vista print out a card. So, but whatever, I digress. Don't listen. I had that thought a couple of times. But in Florida, when I went to look at houses, there was nobody there. When I was selling my house, we vacated for 2 hours so a buyer could come look at the house
With a buyer.
with a buyer agent, but never, you're exactly right, never by themselves. And in fact, you're not allowed to give the super code to get the lockbox open. You're not allowed to give that out to buyers. You have to be with a licensed agent. So you don't want to pay a buyer's commission? Cool. Who's going to show your house? That's not my job. I'm the listing agent. I've listed it and I'm going to answer questions from buyer's agents about it. And I'm going to bring the contract to you, but I work for you, not for the buyer. So I'm not showing them the house, though sometimes a listing agent is there. But that's not their primary responsibility. So you want the house seen at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday? Because you can't be here. You've got to clear out. Who's going to show your house?
I just don't understand what exactly your consent broker is. Yeah, because that's, if you're representing both.
If
You
you're
have to
representing
understand this is
both,
what it
then
is.
yes. If you're representing both, then yes. But that's where it's going to come down to what does the language in your listing agreement say? If you're only getting 3% for one side because they're not paying a buyer's agent, you can say that I'm not providing buyer's agent services. Thanks for joining us. If you have any other questions, my contact information is below, phone number is there. Give us a call. We'd be happy to help you. Again, if you have any title needs or real estate legal needs, we're happy to work with you.